So that didn't go as planned. All right, so yes, I know I didn't do one last week because, again, Maryland, terrible opponent, blowout. What am I going to say? Thankfully, got a lot to talk about this time around. So, yeah, Michigan got handed its first loss of the season tonight in Iowa City. Unfortunate, disappointing, but I'm not getting too broken up about it, and I'll explain why in a little bit. First of all, let's just go into this. How did this happen? How does Michigan lose 14-13 on the last second field goal? Well, only putting up 13 points to start. So a lot of people were making a big qualm about how this was going to be Michigan's first true road test, and for many reasons it was. Michigan, they played two previous road games, but it's at Rutgers and at Spartan Stadium, so, I mean, come on. That's not really that much of a deal right now, but yeah, night game at Iowa, night game in the Big Ten, definitely tough environment as Ohio State found out against Penn State a couple weeks ago. So I don't want to go so far as to say Michigan was unprepared for this game, but there were definitely a lot of things they could have done better. Particularly on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. You didn't have their best game today, obviously, but it really came down to special teams in the end, and Iowa did have a kind of advantage in special teams in the sense that, I mean, I said I was having a lot to talk about this game. I'm really finding it hard to talk about this because both teams played really well. I mean, this game could have gone either way, eyeball to eyeball, and, well, we blink first. What are you going to do? That's football. Not to mention, top four teams, everyone except Bama lost today, so it's just one of those days, I guess. But a couple of things I did notice. Spate today was not his usual self. He was trying to throw the deep ball, but he just couldn't connect. He overthrew Chesson a couple times. He had another pick, which wasn't his fault. He hit Chesson right in the numbers, but he just couldn't hang on to the ball, so that's not on him. He did have a couple bad throws, but for the most part, a lot of his incompletions were due to just receivers not being in position or being unable to hang on to the ball. And he did get sacked twice, and so the offensive line to give him max protection for things they could have done better. The running game had a quiet night. Chris Evans, though, did get quite a lot of carries. Davion Smith had a most pedestrian day. I think if they fed Smith more, they probably would have been able to win this game, or at least punch in more than one touchdown. But, that is what it is. There was some interesting play calling tonight that was oddly conservative for this offense. It's not necessarily like what we've seen in the past. For example, the safety, which ultimately proved crucial, of course. I wouldn't try a running play out of the end zone. I mean, that's just me. I mean, I would go with I just go with three passing plays because, hey, worst case scenario, you're looking at just punting out of the end zone instead of taking a safety with a potential running play. So that I didn't get. Again, when we intercepted the ball with 2 minutes left, we'd all we did was a first down to win the game, and instead ran a couple of uninspired running plays. So again, not sure what that was about. But again, a lot of this you have to chalk to Iowa's defense. Iowa did play obviously with chip on their shoulders because they've been having they're not bad, they're not scrubs, but I think we're definitely seeing they're not exactly a 12-2 Big Ten divisional champion caliber team. So, that's a thing. But the defense today, they only did give up the one touchdown. And there were calls in the game that were pretty suspect. Notably, this was the same officiating crew that refereed last year's Michigan State game, so maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. But honestly, ultimately came down to special teams. I mean, it was, we saw what we saw with Wisconsin, a classic knock 'em, sock 'em, smash mouth Big Ten matchup. And Iowa special teams was able to make plays. They booted the ball down to the one. Well, first of all, that was set up because apparently we started getting calls for breathing on their kicker. So, I don't know what that's about. But hey, booted the ball down to the 1 yard line, set up that safety. Opened up the second half by Khalid Hill fumbling the kickoff return, which I don't necessarily blame him because that's not usually his job. And then they need the field goal to win the game. So, special teams. I mean, that's football. That happens. Okay, so now the main thing, though, that people are really worried about, which is how does this impact Michigan's playoff chances? I'm going to go so far as to say it doesn't. Because one loss, as we've seen in the past, still gets you in. Like we've had, like out of the last 8 teams that have gone to the playoffs, 6 of them have had one loss. So it's not the end of the world, even a team like Iowa. Could Michigan drop out of the top 4? Again, unclear because everyone in the top 4 lost today. In fact, let me just take a look at I'm not really sure. How did I know Ohio State won, so they're probably gonna move up to the top 4. I think Louisville lost. How did Louisville do? Let me just take a look at that for a second. Now you can tell the kind of production value I got going here. No, okay, Louisville did win, so Louisville would probably move up. Ohio State would move up. And let's take a look here. Top 25 CFP. Well, not the AP top 25. I want the CFP top 25. That's what I want here. Like I said, this is how you know this is off the cuff stuff. I'm doing this. I'm pulling this on my computer. Okay, so Ohio State won, Louisville won, Auburn lost. I think Penn State won. So I think, and Washington did lose too. So I think, but you don't have the problem is you don't have any more one-loss teams after Wisconsin. Everyone else is 2-loss. I mean, you got Western Michigan, but they're a MAC team. They're not coming up here. So I think what will happen, my best guess right now, is that Ohio State moves up, Louisville moves up, and Michigan or Clemson will be the number four seed. That is what I'm looking at right now, and odds are that's probably going to change pretty soon. But yeah, like I said, even if Michigan does move out of the top 4 this week, it's not the end of the world because it's still right now going to come down to the game. Make no mistake, the playoffs for Michigan begin 2 weeks from tonight in Columbus. That's Michigan's playoffs, and that was the attitude I had going into the game before this game, and it's the attitude I still have right now. That game is still going to decide everything. It's going to decide. I mean, assuming Michigan, of course, beats Indiana next week, which I don't think is going to be a problem. That game will decide Big Ten East title, the de facto Big Ten championship, because again, I don't see this team losing to Wisconsin. I don't see either of those teams losing to Wisconsin, again. I think Michigan will beat Wisconsin, whoever comes out of the West. And the Big Ten championship ultimately will go to the playoff. Because you look at the other conferences right now, it's just, Ohio State and Michigan head and shoulders are above everyone right now in all the other conferences. I say that even tonight after this, because hey, Ohio State had their loss and they're still hanging around. So, and as for Penn State, technically they're now tied for first atop the division, but a lot of things would have to happen for them to jump both Michigan and Ohio State. So I'm not even going to discuss that. So, yeah, obviously result tonight disappointing, not what we expected, but in terms of the big picture, the impact of this, outside of it dropping out of the top 4 this week, which is likely, ultimately the impact is not going to be that great. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Michigan does in Columbus now. I think this is going to cause people to kind of start walking back the prediction for Columbus, but that's going to be a rivalry game, so I think that's going to be, and that's a noon game, rivalry game, not night game in Columbus. So, again, that game's still very much, out there in the open. And, again, big picture, I still think at this point, the worst thing that happens is that Michigan goes to New Year's Six Bowl. Or if even that, a January 1st Bowl, like the Citrus Bowl we had last year. I don't see them going anything lower than that. Because the way I have it worked out is this. Michigan goes into Ohio State 10-1. They win that game. And they win the championship, they're in the playoff. If they lose that game and Ohio State wins, Ohio State's in the playoff, Michigan will probably be New Year's Six. It won't necessarily be it won't be the Rose Bowl because that might go to Wisconsin, although tiebreaker Michigan, Wisconsin, so they might send us instead. I don't know, but I think that's what happens. Now, if Wisconsin or the Big Ten West champion beats the Big Ten East champion, whether it be Michigan or Ohio State, and then they have 2 losses, that's when things really get interesting. That is kind of the nightmare scenario right now, is that Michigan or Ohio State goes into the Big Ten championship and they lose, because then they'll have 2 losses, and Wisconsin will have 2 losses, and they'll be the Big Ten champions. But so then at that point, anything is possible. So yeah, that's what's happening right now. And again, that really isn't that much different from what was going to happen going in. The only real difference now is number of losses, and unfortunately, the Big Ten team is dead. Unless Louisville and Clemson lose again, which is entirely impossible, because as we've seen so far, anything can happen. Okay, so again, that's this week. Again, disappointing. Obviously, you want to come this far and then you kind of stumble like this, but it's college football. It happens. That's the beauty of the sport. And so, as Harbaugh said last year in a similar context, put steel in our spine, move forward. Next week we have Indiana. I'm going to go on the limb and say I expect this to be like the Colorado game, because Indiana just has ways of putting points on the board because they're working with voodoo chaos magic. So, but I think Michigan will pull off that one, and then that sets up the showdown in Ohio State for the Big Ten championship, the division championship, but the de facto championship, I believe, as well, with everything to play for there. Same as it was going into this game. This loss doesn't change anything in terms of the big picture. It just makes the season look slightly less impressive than it would otherwise. But hey, again, that's football. That's how the way it goes. All right, so that's it for this week. Thank you for watching. I will see you next week, hopefully with a better result, better news, and as always, go blue.